I was so against online dating, and two of my best friends decided one night they were gonna make me an online profile on christianmingle.com. They ended up finding a guy on there. A couple weeks later, we met, started dating. 2 months later, we got engaged. 6 months later, we got married. A couple years in, we decided we wanted to start having kids. So, the dream just to have a family and raise our kids and grow old together. Most people go into wanting to have kids and start having a family and think, it's gonna happen right away. And it did not happen right away for us. Saw many doctors, had many tests, and we have not been able to have kids. It was tough. It was the darkest time of my life. Watching other people go through having kids, feeling like God wasn't there, like He wasn't listening to me, praying constantly, others praying for us all the time, and just feeling like I wasn't getting the answers that I really wanted. Mother's Day at church was always difficult, and it got to a point once when I said I was never gonna go back to church on Mother's Day because it was so hard to feel like I was not hearing from God and in so much pain. And I couldn't be at church on Mother's Day. At one point I realized that I was struggling with control because I felt like I could not control us having kids. And so I started to control him. And it took me a while to figure that out. And once I did, our next question was like, okay, how do I work through this? How do I work through these control issues? I had this image of the perfect family, and because we weren't the perfect family, I then portrayed this image onto him of needing to be the perfect husband. I feel like I'd done everything right in my life. Grew up in a Christian home. I small group leaders. I volunteered in church. I did on a missions trip. I felt like we were perfectly set up to have kids and provide for them. As much as I prayed and asked for answers, I just felt like I wasn't hearing it. I wasn't hearing from God at all. I felt like He was not there. I knew He had a plan, but I felt like He wasn't listening. I found a devotional book called Control Girl by Shannon Popkin, and one of the first things in the book talks about how God may be trying to teach you about control if you have infertility. And I was so mad. I almost threw the book against the wall. Like, come on, God, really? Just a random book that I picked off of Amazon. In this book, it's about 7 women in the Bible who struggle with control. And I didn't realize how many of them actually struggle with infertility as well. My husband, Dave, always talked about needing to surrender to God. And I kept saying, I'm trying. But it's so hard to do that. And I just let control and anger fester for a long time. I was nervous. I didn't know what to expect. I wanted a change in my life, but I also knew I had to be vulnerable in order to do that. I was really excited for it. I was really hopeful. So that first weekend when we were here, I was sitting looking at the lake and just praying and telling God, I just feel like I haven't heard from you. I don't know that you're with me. I'm really struggling with this. And I had this moment where the wind just picked up, and I had this, I can only describe it as like an out-of-body experience where I felt like I was floating or being carried, and I heard this man's voice say, I am with you. I knew that that was God. I knew that that was God's voice saying that I am with you. And everything just stopped, the wind stopped, and I just sat there with tears streaming down my face. I hadn't felt like I'd heard from Him in years, and I knew that He was with me in my struggles, in my pain, even though He had a plan for us. While I felt like I had some peace, after that I felt finally like, God hears me, He's with me. But we're still struggling with infertility, and I'm still experiencing this on a regular basis. So I was thankful that Encourage was a year-long experience to work through a lot of that. I learned a lot about myself in those weekends. I felt like I needed to have kids to get approval from others. That's kind of going back to the control piece of it. So I really realized that weekend how much approval was really the idol, needing others' approval in my life. That weekend I realized that I didn't need approval from others. All I needed was approval from God. And when I finally realized that, it was like a light bulb moment for me. And I felt like I could finally surrender to Him, not surrender to others, not surrender to this picture perfect, idea that I had for us, this dream. You had us carry this rock around all weekend. Before even knowing what you guys were gonna have us do with this rock, I wanted to write all these things on this rock and throw it in the lake and totally surrender it to God. I was able to write things on this rock, like infertility, need for approval, and fully surrender it to God. And it was that weekend that I felt like I became a whole different person. You could see the joy in me, you could see the lightness, and I've changed a lot since that weekend. Even in small things like having people come over and feeling like the house needed to be perfect because I needed their approval. When it comes to triggers, that's changed as well. Pregnancy announcements and new babies were devastating. Now I'm actually happy for people. And yeah, it's still tough. It will always be tough. But when I find myself really struggling, I turn to God and just pray about it and know that He has a plan for my life. I talked about Mother's Day and how difficult it was for me to go to church. And after Encourage, I felt like going to church on Mother's Day was the final act of surrender. It was tough. I felt almost awkward, I guess, walking into church exposed. And my crying in church that day was so different than my crying in church was years before. And it was tears of relief, tears of happiness, and it was not tears of pain. And I felt like that was a pivotal moment in my life. I know it's tough. I've been there. We're still there. We've been struggling with it for 7 years now and still don't have answers. You may not know what the plan is that God has for you. We don't. We wish we did. But know that He does have a plan. It really is connecting with God and giving it over to Him.